Every year, the battle between Microsoft and Apple gets more and more intense. This year, let's see who came out on top. What's going on, guys? My name's David Tomic and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button and join us as we talk all things tech. Today, we're looking at the Microsoft Surface Laptop 3 and we're looking at the 2019 MacBook Pro. More specifically, we're going to be looking at the intro model of both of these devices as they're the best selling devices for each brand. Let's start with some big ticket items. The price. The Microsoft Surface Laptop 3 in Australia starts from $1357 or 933 USD, whilst the MacBook Pro starts from 1999 Australian or 1375 USD. You can get 10% off both of these devices if you're a university student, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. So the first point for the price category goes to Microsoft. Tech specs. For the base Surface Laptop 3, you get a 10th generation i5 Intel Core chip, 8 GB of RAM and 128 GB of SSD storage. Whilst in the MacBook Pro, you get an 8th generation i5 Intel Core processor with also 8 GB of RAM and 128 GB of SSD storage. So on paper, when you're comparing these two base level specs, you find that the Microsoft gains an additional point here. But when you stop looking at the paper figures and you actually start looking at the device, you find that the ports become a very big problem. On the Microsoft Surface Laptop 3, you get a USB-A, a USB-C, a headphone jack, and also a proprietary fast charging connector. Whilst on the MacBook Pro, you get 4 USB-C ports, with 2 of those ports being Thunderbolt 3. You don't get any Thunderbolts on the Microsoft Surface Laptop 3. So if you look at these two devices, the Surface Laptop 3 probably has more compatible ports for this day and age. You're not going to need any adapters to use any of your old devices or any of your new devices going forward. But in a couple of years' time, you probably will need to convert that single USB-A to a USB-C to run all your latest tech. Whilst Apple, on the other hand, has given you the advantage of going for all 4 USB-C ports, this might not be a great advantage at the start because you may have to grab a couple of adapters or alternatively go out and buy all new tech that's USB-C compatible. But in the future, you're definitely going to be better off. As we all know, Apple has always been the leaders in port technology when it comes to tech. A few years ago, you may remember that they released the iPhone 7 with no headphone jack. This caused a lot of commotion and everybody was up in arms. However, if you think about it, 2 years later, every single flagship device manufacturer, including Samsung themselves, has quickly removed all headphone jacks. This is more for a money kind of financial system because they're able to create more revenue from selling you their wireless headphones than they were from selling you some cheap cabled headphones in the past. So if we look at this as an example, Apple going with the 4 USB-C ports on the MacBook Pro definitely gives it the advantage for future-proofing. And that's why I'm giving the ports point to Apple. Charging and battery life. This is a pretty big category in my opinion. Charging is everything. I don't really like to charge my devices overnight, especially if I know I need it a couple hours later. And also considering the fact that laptops are meant to be a travel device, you really want your devices to be long lasting and quick charging. The Surface Laptop 3 charges from 0 to 80% in under 1 hour and has a theoretical runtime of 11.5 hours, which you may or may not have noticed is significantly less than the Surface Laptop 2, which had a theoretical runtime of 14.5 hours. I know I personally experienced on my old Surface Laptop 2 that you could get about 16 hours of runtime off this device, which is significantly more than what they're promising in the Surface Laptop 3. Whilst the Apple MacBook Pro has a theoretical charge time from 0 to 80% in under 2 hours, and a total theoretical battery runtime of 10.5 hours. Sorry Apple, this is a very great attempt, but the point again goes to Microsoft. Moving on to the screen quality, because for me, screen quality is very important. You don't want to be thinking, oh no, I can't see my screen, it's too dark, it's not clear, it's blurry, especially when you're paying anywhere between 1,300 and 2,000 Australian dollars for a laptop. This is where the Surface 3 starts to show some cracks. With 380 nits of brightness, 201 pixels per inch, and a 10-point touchscreen display, you'd think this is pretty good quality. However, when you compare it to the Apple MacBook Pro, you find that it's a very different story. The MacBook Pro has 500 nits of brightness, 227 pixels per inch, but no touchscreen display. It does promise 25% more colors than the sRGB range that's inside the Microsoft Surface Laptop 3, and it does offer you the True Tone color display. So if you've ever used one of these Retina screens, you know for a fact that Apple's screen is significantly better than anything that Microsoft's produced to date. So we currently stand at 3 points to Microsoft and 2 points to Apple. Keyboards and trackpads. The Microsoft Surface Laptop 2 already had a fantastic keyboard that was miles ahead of the 2018 MacBook Pro. So when they brought out the Surface Laptop 3, you knew they were going to make it better. The Surface Laptop 3's keyboard is just that little bit quieter, just that little bit nicer, and just that little bit better than anything else on the market. Nonetheless, the MacBook Pro still does have a very nice butterfly keyboard with ultra quiet keys. This isn't any disadvantage to the MacBook Pro, but in my personal opinion, it isn't as nice to type, it isn't as easy to type, and after a while you just start to get annoyed because your fingertips hurt because there's no rebound on the keys. It's just like tapping aluminium all day. It is rumored that the 2020 MacBook Pro will solve this issue with a brand new keyboard setup, but until it's released, we don't know what Apple's going to launch. Looking at the two trackpads, personally for me, they're both really good. I don't find a fault in either of them. They're both a nice large size, with the MacBooks being slightly bigger and slightly easier to use, but when you compare them like for like, there isn't too much of a difference in my opinion. So unfortunately for the poor quality of the keyboard on the MacBook side things, I'm awarding this point again to Microsoft. Ecosystems and compatibility, Microsoft. Well, what ecosystem? It doesn't really have anything integrated between its devices. The MacBook Pro, on the other hand, has this very user-friendly, very inviting Apple experience between its devices. If you have an iPhone, an iPad, and a MacBook, well, your life just got a hell of a lot easier. Unfortunately for Apple, it still does have some compatibility issues when programs are concerned. You can run Boot Camp and Parallel on it to fix these problems, so that takes away from the con entirely. When we're talking ecosystems, Apple definitely gets the point. I could keep this comparison going on forever if I'm being honest with you, and at the end of the day, both devices would end up neck and neck. The Surface Laptop 3 and 2019 MacBook Pro are both incredible pieces of tech with their own pros and cons. Personally, if I was to go out and buy one of these devices today and only use one of these devices, well, it would be the Microsoft Surface Laptop 3 for the sole purpose of the better keyboard. If the new 2020 MacBook Pro comes out with a competitive keyboard that's just as nice to use as the Surface Laptop 3 and also comes out with a competitive price tag that isn't 700 Australian dollars more than the Surface Laptop 3, then my personal opinion will change and the crown will go to Apple. But for the time being, I personally believe that the Surface Laptop 3 comes out on top for price, compatibility, and just the general day-to-day user experience. That's all from me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you smash that subscribe button 2019 style. And as always, I'll see you next Monday.